Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who at their worst learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. Tucker Max, he was the ultimate party guy. Now, not in high school or college, but in law school. He figured out early that it was more fun to cut class, party, and write about his life than to actually attend class. He was the ultimate bad boy. And he chronicled his outings and party life in emails just to friends. And those friends, they loved them. Now, after being prompted to publish his chronicles, he sent them out to hundreds of publishers, all who gave him a hard no. So he did what anyone would do that believed in their work that was being rejected. He started a blog and he put it all out there. And that blog, well, it took off. So much so that MTV noticed, and all those publishers that rejected him, they came back proposing. 4 New York Times bestsellers later, and 3 that hit number 1, which have sold over 4.5 million copies worldwide. On the very controversial subjects, Tucker decided he had changed, and writing about his days in party world, well, they weren't him anymore. So today, Tucker is the opposite of that single party guy. He's married with a family, and he's co-founded the ever-successful SCRIBE Media that helps you write, publish, and market your own book. He even published the best-selling David Goggins book. Join in today and learn exactly how Tucker Max leveled up and created everything from nothing. Today on Leveling Up, I've got the one and only Tucker Max, who I've been dying to chat with. He is the person that you go to write and publish a book now. He owns and created Scribe. And that's not always who he was. In fact, he built a pretty significant brand on 3 books years ago that had somewhat controversial topics. And I wanted to know all the things, like how that happened, how he did that, how he shifted away from that, now helps other people write and publish books. So thank you so much for being here, Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
So take us back, Tucker. You were just like the average dude that wrote on topics that other people didn't really think they should be talking about. How did that even happen?
Yeah, pretty much. After law, I went to Duke Law School, and I had like 8 friends that I was real close to. And we basically, the trick to law school is once you realize that your entire grade is based on the exam and that nothing else matters, then you stop going to class and you just party all the time. At least if you're like me and my friends.
That's a good trick.
Yeah, right. And our last 2 years of law school were basically ridiculous. It was we used to joke we were like the fraternity of law school, right? Because everyone else is serious, and we would just be literally going out 5 nights a week, getting drunk, hooking up with girls, being idiots, like all guys are in their 20s, except most of them in law school aren't. We were. And so
you were like the frat boy, but total frat boy, but in law school. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Which is funny because I wasn't actually even in a fraternity in undergrad. But everyone assumed, well, obviously you were. It's like, well, no, I wasn't. But you're allowed to get drunk and be an idiot and not be in a fraternity. But so then after law school, we all went to different cities to work. And I went to South Florida, which is like the armpit of America. It's the worst. And I hated it. And so to deal with my depression, basically, obviously I drank a lot and hooked up with a lot of girls that I probably shouldn't be. But then I would write about it to my friends. Right? I would send them emails, and they thought the emails were hilarious, and they kind of just blew up into this. Well, first, then my dad fired me from the family business, and I got fired from being a lawyer, and so I kind of had nothing else I could do. And so my friends were like, these emails are the only thing you do well. You should maybe do something with this. And then, kind of long story short, try to get published. No one wanted to publish my stuff. And so I put up a website with all my stories, and this was in 2002, and it kind of blew up. And this is before people could write on the internet. This is before MySpace even existed.
Before blogging was a thing.
Right, blogging didn't exist as a word then, and so it kind of took off. And then I just kind of ran with it. And I like just all I did, it never occurred to me that people like, I didn't think anyone would think my stories were funny except my friends,
Yeah.
because like they knew me. And also it never occurred to me that everyone else wasn't doing the same thing. Like, of course everyone else is getting drunk 5 nights a week and acting like a moron. My friends and I are, well, like I was young and stupid, right? And so like then when the stories really started getting out, I realized, okay, I was wrong. Lots of people love this that don't know me. They think it's hilarious. And not a lot, like there are definitely a lot of people who do it, but there's a lot of people who don't as well, and who are either shocked by it or offended or titillated, or they see it as aspirational, which was
Mhm.
another shocking thing to me. Like they're like high school kids like, dude, you're so cool. I can't wait till like I can be like you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
just go out and drink. But then of course to a 16-year-old, someone 26 seems like a
Yeah.
hero, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so wild. So I want to back up for a minute. So you said when you were in college or when you were younger, were you that type of guy? Were you still like the party guy then, or that just start evolving in law school?
Yeah, see, I was, but I wasn't. I went to the University of Chicago, which is like, one of the hardest, best undergrads in the country, but it's also full of nerds. And
Okay.
like, I didn't really realize this coming out of high school, because like, even though I was smart, I was an idiot, right? Like, I had perfect verbal SATs and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But I was an idiot. Like, I didn't know
Okay.
anything about life, right? And so I didn't think social life mattered that much in college. I'm like, it doesn't matter where I go. It'll all be the same. I can make my social life, which is really one of the dumbest things you could possibly think. But at 18, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'll go to a really good college so I can get a good job or whatever. I still had the dumbass mindset that most kids that age do. And so I went to the best undergrad I got into, which was University of Chicago. And I got there and it was so crazy. The first weekend, like I brought like a couple cases of not even beer. I brought a
Uh-huh.
couple cases of cider with me, like hard cider, like apple, alcoholic, but and I'll never forget this. Um, and of course I wasn't drinking age. I was whatever 18, and I had it in my room, and I had brought a mini fridge, so it was stocked. And I'll never forget, like the first big Friday night of the school year, like all these people were in my dorm room, including like upperclassmen. And I'm like, I feel like I shouldn't be the cool guy my first weekend of my freshman year. Like the cool guy of the upperclassmen. Like,
Yeah.
I like, I, even though I had an inflated opinion of myself, I was like, this can't be right. And it turned out it wasn't. Like, it's a socially retarded school. And so I ended up graduating in 3 years because I was just like, ugh, get me out of here. And then went to law school. And so all my friends at law school were like the smartest people at their state schools. Like,
Yeah.
one of my buddies went to Kansas, one went to Pitt, one went to UVA. And so they were like the smart, cool kids from their state schools. And I never, like, there were no dudes like that at my college.
Okay.
I was like, oh, these are my people. And so I got there and I kind of made up for in undergrad or in law school what I missed in undergrad. And
Yeah.
I went to Duke, right? And Duke is right by UNC, which is where like it's like 65% girls there, and all the
Okay.
dudes are douchebags. So it was like the greatest thing on earth. I'm like the 24-year-old cool guy who goes to law school, so all the girls love me there, even though they had no business loving me. I just
But it's
looked good
all
compared
feeding
to
your
the.
ego, I'm sure, even
Of
more, and
course,
just like making you more into that character that you were basically being.
of course, right? And like it's so easy to look cool when your competition are douchey North Carolina frat guys, right? So of course you're gonna look cool. Like it's not like a competition. And so yeah, so I just kind of I and law school is so easy. Like, and I'm not saying that to brag. Like anyone in law school will tell you it's really, really easy. And even though they say it's not, it is. And so I just kind of acted like an idiot for 3 years and had a
Huh.
great time. And then that became the basis of my stories.
Yeah. And I mean, just from you explaining that, that's not an uncommon story that when you think you're just sharing something with friends because you're being so authentic, you're just being real, you're not trying to impress anyone, that's what ends up landing with the masses because they feel like you're talking to them. So I'm
You're
assuming,
100% right.
I didn't see these emails, but I'm assuming like anyone reading it, the cool kid, the not cool kid, whatever, they're looking at it like, oh, they feel like you're their buddy. And of course it was going to take off.
Yeah, I mean, so you can read them now. They're the book, or anyone, your listeners, the book my first book, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, like half of that book are emails to my friends.
That's so funny.
Like they're ripped right from the email. And it's funny, like you bring that up. I teach writing now. Like we've helped 1,500 people write books, including huge people like David Goggins and Tiffany Haddish and all these people. And we say exactly what you just said. Like that's really our way that we teach them is don't stop thinking you're writing to a crowd. Because there's no such thing as a crowd. You're writing to one person. Like figure out who your avatar is and write to them. And don't even try and write to them. Talk to them.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're teaching something, teach it to them. If you're trying to make them laugh, then make that person laugh. And then you nailed it. If you can do that, then the book takes care of itself.
Yeah. And I would say, I know you teach it with books and writing, but I would say that applies to social media. It applies to your interview, like anything that you're doing in the public, you have to talk to one person, I would imagine.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I love this story. Now I don't want to skip over one thing that you said that was important. You said earlier, maybe I heard it wrong. You said I was depressed, so I was drinking and doing all these things. What were you depressed about? And is that what was feeding into this? Like then you had this ego hit, or what was happening there? Or did I hear that wrong?
No, you heard it right. You heard it absolutely right. So, okay. So, I was 25.
Okay.
25. And I just left law school, and I liked law school because of my friends, but law school sucked. And being a lawyer was the worst. And I ended up getting fired in literally 3 weeks because I hated it so much. I kind of acted out and forced them to. And then I went to work for my dad who owns restaurants in South Florida. And that kind of sucked. I didn't really like the restaurant business that much. And my dad was not a very good boss. And then South Florida is just the cultural armpit of America. Like if you have a soul or are intelligent or both, there's nothing for you in South Florida. Like I didn't do drugs, right? I don't do coke. I don't do meth. So like I had nothing to relate to anyone in South Florida, you know, because that's basically everyone down there. And I don't speak Spanish. So if I was Cuban, maybe it would be amazing. But like there was just like, the culture down there is just broken and dysfunctional and awful. And, or maybe I guess if you're really old, it's cool, but I was none of those things.
I love even just talking to you right now. You're so real. And I'm everybody that's from Florida, that's mad right now, then just be mad. That's just it.
Okay. If you're mad at me, just Google Florida man. And then Google Florida man. Like that's the running joke about Florida. It's the worst.
My husband's from Florida, and I don't know that he'd say quite the same, but he wouldn't be that far off. But one of my best friends lives in Miami, so she likes it there. But I don't know. I can't speak on the rest of Florida.
Good for her. It's terrible.
Okay.
So I didn't realize too how important intelligence in a woman was to me until I got to Florida, and I couldn't meet a girl who was both attractive and not dumb as a bag of rocks. Okay. Right? Like there were plenty of really ugly.
But that might have worked out for you when you were back in your day, like when you were partying and having fun. You maybe didn't care.
No, actually no, because like my game always worked best on smart girls. Like the cliche that dumb girls are easy. I don't know where that came from because that's not the way it worked for me, at least. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough. Maybe dumb girls are easy for really hot guys, but I'm not that hot, right? And so I have to be funny and smart. And funny and smart doesn't work well on dumb girls. It works great on smart girls, right? And so like Florida was it was terrible for me in all ways. And so I just hated it. And so basically I would get drunk and hook up with dumb girls anyway, or whatever.
You didn't want to deal. You didn't want to move. You didn't want to deal with this. So you're just checking out, having fun, and doing that. So
pretty much.
So how did you even get the idea to like start emailing your friends this stuff? And who was the first person that like said, "Turn this into something because this could go somewhere"?
Well, so like if I was doing this now, it would be a group chat, right? It wouldn't be email. But you got to remember, like at the time, like smartphones didn't even really exist.
Yeah.
No, they didn't, because that would have been 01, 02.
Okay.
And so like so instead of smartphones or group chats, it was email. And it was like my friends, because we had always worked in different places over the summer in law school. And the way being a lawyer is boring. And so the way we entertained ourselves was emailing each other like funny stories. And like all my friends were really smart and good writers. that's why it didn't occur to me that my stuff would like excel, because in my group of 8 friends, I
Yeah.
wasn't the best writer and I wasn't the funniest.
You just thought it was normal. You're just being funny and sharing.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
So who was the first friend that said, or do you remember that moment? Like when someone's like, hey, you should get this published or you should put these together. How did that idea even come about?
Yeah, it was one of my friends,
Okay.
one of the guys from law school. He was like, dude, this is the funniest stuff I've ever read. And like, you're like not good at the things that you think you're good at. So maybe you should try this. And I was like, I mean, I knew my emails were funny, but it
Yeah.
just didn't occur to me that it was like anything beyond just being funny to my friends. And
Right.
when he said that, I was like, all right. And so I sent it to some friends like in other social circles, and they
Okay.
loved it. And then it just kind of went from there.
So did you put them all together? How did you even, like most people wouldn't even know where to start with something like that. Like, did you send it to a publisher? Did you find an agent? Like, how did you even know where to put it?
Yeah. So, okay. So remember, this is '02 when this happened, right? So it's a different world. So there's this big book called like Agents and Publishers or something like that. It basically has every address of every publishing company and agent. And now it's probably pretty small, but at the time it was huge.
Okay.
And so I sent query letters with examples of my writing to like 1,000.
Okay.
And I was rejected by literally 100%.
So everyone's in know. So you put it all on the internet just for free. You just put it totally out there.
Yeah, I put everything up for free. And then what happened? 2 things happened at once. So at first, nothing happened. But then like about 2 or 3 months after, like all this stuff blew up, right? So I got put on this site, at the time was huge, called, I think it's still pretty big, called College Humor. And they put a bunch of my stories up and they blew up. And then like MTV came and filmed me for like this is back when like it was super creepy to meet people on the internet.
Yeah.
And so like I had this dating application up, like a application women could fill out to go on a date with me, which was a joke. Clearly it was like funny, right? Yeah. But like they kind of took it seriously and like filmed me like I was actually doing this, and I was like, okay, cool, if that gets me attention. And so they came and filmed it, and then the site blew up, and it's like every day the servers were going down and it was getting all this attention and it was nuts. And then from there, like all the publishers who rejected me came back and were like, hey, we want to publish your stuff now, and it all went from there.
So I have some questions. If you're rejected by 100 publishers, like most people would say, okay, no one likes my stuff, I'm done, it sucks, I'm not going to do it. What made you decide like, I'm going to go figure out this HTML stuff and put it up there anyway? So
it's a good question. So it was actually more than 100. It was 100% of publishers. It was probably 500 or 1,000. So it was even worse.
Yeah,
I know, it's even worse, right?
Yeah.
So here's what happened though. At the same time that they were rejecting me, my stuff was getting forwarded all around the country, right? So like I would get my friends from high school would email me they would forward my emails back to me, not knowing that I had written it, and be like, "You seen this? This is so funny, right?"
That's funny.
And so, right, I was like, okay. It taught me that publishing. It's funny, like the whole job of publishers is to find talent and publish them. Yeah. And I'm like, they're bad at their only job. Like literally, this is their only job. And I knew they were wrong, because I knew it, when other people are spreading the word about your stuff, then it's good, period.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's how I knew.
For sure. So who finally turned around and said, okay, we're going to publish this? And did you expect it to take off the way that it did?
Yeah. So I mean, after the MTV thing, and after I also got sued by this girl who, and it became a big First Amendment thing. And so the New York Times wrote about it, and like, I was pretty good at generating a lot of like what people call viral, attention now.
Yeah.
And so I had pretty much all the publishers came back to me and wanted to do the book. And I knew it was going to be a hit, because, and it wasn't even an arrogant thing. It's just like, it's sort of like, imagine if you sell, I don't know, soap, and you take it to a flea market and you sell out every day in an hour, right?
Yeah,
Then you know your soap's going to blow up if you can get distribution, right?
totally.
Because you've already seen the evidence. It's the same thing. It was the exact same thing. Like I saw the evidence, and it wasn't like my friends were telling me it was great. I mean, I
Yeah.
was at that point, I was getting hundreds of emails a day from people, like, and not all of them were positive. Like, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
like at least 20% were negative, but that's like the 80% positive, 20% negative is like the perfect ratio because it means it's
Yeah.
engaging.
Plus, it seems like I think if people are like the type of person that's just people pleasing everybody, like they're not the ones that blow up. Like
No.
you have to have some type of controversy or have these differences of opinions and all that. So I think it's just this perfect storm for it to blow up with the topic and everything.
Yep, it's exactly what it was.
So, okay, so you do this, and then was it getting to you at all, the negative controversy, and how were you handling that? Because that's the other thing that would stop people. Like, okay, I've got this stuff I'm putting out here. It's my life, but now I'm getting like, this woman's trying to sue me and there's controversy and people don't like me. Like, did that ever get in your head at all? And how did you keep going through that? Did you not care?
Um, it's hard. Like, okay, so I can tell you what I did at the time, which now that I'm older and wiser and more mature, I understand was fairly dysfunctional, but it's
Okay.
what I did. At the time, I was basically just like, I don't give a fuck.
Right.
I was total, like, I don't care what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter. They don't matter, blah, blah, blah. Like, now I would approach it differently, but
Mm-hmm.
like, and not necessarily caring what everyone think. I would just approach it like I had a very defensive stance then, right? Whereas now I would just be very detached from, like, all those opinions. And whereas then it was more like I was like, like the kid who's like, they can't do something, so they say they don't want to do it. It's sort of the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the basic idea was, I'm not going to engage. I had enough positive attention and enough positive, and I mean the majority of people who were fans. So I was like, okay, I know this has something, so I'm just going to go with that. And I'm not going to worry about people who don't like it. And in fact, I liked that because most of the people who hated it were like people I didn't care about, And so I was like, all right, this is great. Having haters means I'm making an impact.
Yeah.
And so, like, I kind of approached it that way.
So now at this point, were you making money? And like, cause I know you're getting a lot of exposure and stuff, but did you get an advance from your publisher? Was MTV paying? Like, were you making money, and were you seeing this is going to be your career now?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you sort of start evolving. I mean, you make 2 more books, and then you have all 3 books as bestsellers at the same time.
Yeah. So when my third one came out, all 3 were on the list. So my first one came out in 2006. My third one came out in 2012, and they
Mm-hmm.
were all on the list at the same time. And
Which is like unheard of, by the way, for those of
right,
you listening.
it's like me, Malcolm Gladwell, like Michael Lewis, and Brene Brown are the only people
Yeah.
to ever do that.
So did you know how big that was when that was happening? Because it's like not even like you were setting out to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, like, it's one of those things where you think it's a big deal from the outside, but
Mm-hmm.
after you've done all the work to get there, it's like not a big deal anymore.
Okay.
It's like it's cool, but I'm not like, I don't sit around, like, I don't go to my wife and be like, hey, I had 3 books on the New York Times list at
Yeah.
once. Like, I don't.
I would say
It's
that
like,
to my husband every single day if I had that. I'm just kidding. Like, hey, I had 3. That's funny. But just as someone that's had 2 best-selling books myself, that have neither one have ever hit New York Times, like for me, that was frustrating. So like, to me, it's like, wow, how did you do that? That's pretty cool. So I think it's a pretty cool thing.
it's cool. It is, like, and if if or when it happens to you, you'll like it a lot, but you'll see what I mean, man. Like, after a month or 6 months or whatever, it's like the novelty of it wears off, and
Yeah.
it's just like, it's like, it doesn't. There's a great saying in Buddhism: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You
Mm-hmm.
realize that it doesn't actually matter that much. It's just a cool thing that you worked hard for and got.
Yeah, it's another accolade. I get it. Okay, so then things totally pivot and you stop doing that and you create your own company. Can you walk us through that? Like, what made you decide to not continue writing in that method? What changed?
Well, I mean, all my stories were about drinking and hooking up and being an idiot, like 29-year-old, and I
Right.
just wasn't that person anymore, you know? Like I just didn't I look, I could have traveled the world and I could have milked that for a long time,
Yeah.
but like I just didn't it wasn't interesting to me anymore, you know?
So
Like I
did
just
it start
outgrew that
feeling
shit.
like disconnected, like I have to be this character, or what was the conversation you
Yeah,
were having?
yeah, it was a little bit that. It was just like it was I just didn't want to do it anymore, and then I
Yeah.
didn't want to get to that point where I felt like I was disconnected and pretending to be someone I wasn't, you know?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to like do other things and be other things. And like my fans just wanted more drunken tales of revelry. I'm
Totally.
like, I just and so and nothing against that. That's cool. I'm like, you just have to get that from somebody else now. And so I
Yeah.
retired at the end of the last book and said, I'm never writing anything like this again. I'm moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. But it's, you really think back, like you built it on such authenticity, like that's who you were. So if it's not who you were anymore, it wasn't going to make sense.
Yep,
So that
exactly.
makes sense. So how did you get the idea to start teaching others like how to write and get like instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to show you how to get a publisher or get an agent, like what made you go this other direction of start it yourself where you're teaching them?
Well, I mean, I wish I could tell you the story about how I'm like a business genius and I
Uh-huh.
planned it all out, but that's not reality at all. What
Okay.
actually happened was, actually, I'm an idiot. So I had people. No, seriously. I, basically, from the moment I published a book, I had people asking me how could they write their book, and
Okay.
I would always like give them stupid answers, like the snobby writer answer, which is like, you know, I have
Find
to
an
work
agent.
hard. Right,
Oh.
you have to work hard. You have to find an agent. You have to blood, sweat, and tears, whatever, all the nonsense shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, like this woman called me out. She's like, "Look, that's a bullshit answer." Like it was at an entrepreneur dinner. She's like, "I'm an
Okay.
entrepreneur. You say you're an entrepreneur. If you're actually an entrepreneur, you'd help me figure out how to get this book out of my head without having to do all that stuff."
Wow.
I know, and I was like, "Fuck, she's totally right."
Yeah.
And so I became obsessed with that. How do I help and like how do you take a normal person who has a book in them, but they don't know how to write and they don't have the time to learn how to be a writer? How do you get it out of their head, right? In a way
Yeah.
that's totally authentic. It's their book, not just ghostwriting. It's got to be their
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
And so I kind of worked through the process. I just did it as a project with her and it worked really well. We did this amazing book. And I'm such an idiot. I was like, oh, that's a cool project, you know, and that's it. And then she's like, no, I'm going to refer people to you. I'm like, why? She's like, because they all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay. She's like in YPO, New York or whatever. And then she just started pushing people to me. And so like, I literally had to hire like a friend of mine who like had helped me on other things. I'm like, can you do this work for me? He's like, what do you mean? And I showed him what to do and he's a writer. And so he started doing it. And then like before I knew it, we'd done like $250,000 in sales. And it's like, he's like, we need to hire more people. I'm like, do you think this is a business? And he's like, you're an idiot. Yeah. He's like, you don't even have a website and you've sold $250,000 worth of this stuff. Yes, this is a business.
So were you like consulting with them, like kind of teaching her like how to do it, or were you doing it for her? Like what was that looking like?
Right. So there are plenty of people who teach people how to write books.
Right.
Although pretty much all of them are terrible at it.
Okay.
Which I can say with authority now, because after 5 years in this space, we're very good at teaching people this stuff, and I
Yeah.
see what other people do; they're not good. But at the time, I was not teaching.
Mm-hmm.
What I was doing, we basically figured out a new way to ghostwrite a book, right? So
Okay.
like I figured out a very structured way to position and outline a book. And
Mm-hmm.
then we figured out a way to interview somebody to get the book out of them, but it's entirely their words and their
Right.
ideas and their content. We just turn it into a book, but we're not ghostwriting it. Like I'm not
Right.
doing research and thinking up my own ideas.
So you
And
have
so
like, you basically have somebody interviewing and turning it into flow, like into writing it, but they're not taking the topic and going and doing the research like a traditional ghostwriter. I get what you're saying. Okay.
that's basically it, right? And so we
Okay.
started there, and then that was all we did for the first 2.5 years. And then as we got bigger, a bunch of people were like, "Hey, I want to write it myself, but I want you guys to like coach me through and then publish it when it's done." And so now we have that option where like we have a 2-day workshop in Austin that I still lead personally, and
Mm-hmm.
I take you through the whole process. You do it in the room right there with us. We give you feedback, and then you go home and write it yourself. You do weekly calls, and we a whole accountability and all that stuff. And then when you're done, we do a full edit and publishing. We have those are our two main products. And then also some people who just write the book entirely themselves and need us to publish it, we can do that too.
But are you more like a traditional publisher now though too, because your books go into stores now, or does that only happen for certain people?
No, it only happens for certain people. I mean, we've done 1,500 books. They're not all in stores. We probably have 20 in stores, right?
So the advantage that I always saw with this is why I'm asking too, it's new to me. Like, so I've done books, I've done them on my own where it's just like an ebook or Amazon, or I've done them through publisher. And the advantage that I've always seen with a publisher is one that they pay you up front. So you get, you get an advance on that, and they do help you some very small amount, but some on the marketing side or getting the store placement.
Yeah. So, right. Very small amount of marketing, usually basically none. They can help you with store placement. It's not guaranteed, but your chances are much, much better. Yeah. But here's the thing. In 2019, something like 20% of book sales are in stores. Like it doesn't matter. It's not a channel that matters very much unless you're writing. If you're writing if you're a big novelist, right? If you're selling to the type of people who go into bookstores, which is like, not that many times. I mean, I have 3,000 books in my house. I run a publishing company. I can't remember the last time I went into a bookstore.
Yeah, we go to Amazon or
right, of course. And so, like, for most people, being in a bookstore doesn't matter. And then the advance can be nice, but like, the reality is most people aren't getting a traditional deal to begin with. But even those who are, like, most of them are better off owning the rights and royalty. Like, that's the reason that most of our authors work with us, is because they pay us a service fee. Like, they pay us, and then we do an amazing job on the book, but then they own the book, right? So like David Goggins, his book Can't Hurt Me was one of the best-selling books last year in the entire world. Yeah, and he sold like over 1 million copies. He worked with us start to finish, and I mean, his book sold over 1 million copies. So he made $5 or $6 million instead of he would have made maybe $1 million if he'd gone with traditional.
Yeah, because you would get such a small percent after the advance.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it. So people pay you to get the help on it, but you have the system down, and then they're going to profit on the back end because they're going to make a lot more.
Yep.
I love it. And I love how this all came about, like literally from your own accidental experience writing books. And then you're so good at that, at like living in it. So this is now what you do. This is your main thing. This is what and it's so funny because I'm assuming when you went to law school, you never thought in a million years you'd end up running a publishing company.
No, never.
Yeah. That's crazy. So has that law background come in handy though? I would imagine it has now a little bit.
Not really. No.
Not really.
No. I mean, a little bit, I guess, here and there, but like not worth spending 3 years. I mean, like I liked it because I had a lot of fun with my friends, but otherwise, intellectually, it was a huge waste of time. Yeah.
Any regrets to those initial books that you wrote or those topics? How do you feel about those now?
Great. I mean, I live in a 7,000 square foot house on an acre in Austin with a pool and a wine cellar, and I've got an amazing wife and kids and all this stuff. And I mean, like, I it's who I was at the time. Right? Yeah. I definitely did things that I regret, like stupid things I shouldn't have done, no doubt. But
everybody has.
I definitely don't regret being honest about it in the book. You know, I may regret some of the things I did, but not the book.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that story. What would you tell somebody that's listening right now that is maybe in that depressed state that you were in, or they're in their own personal rock bottom or whatever it is, and they're trying to get out of that and level up and create everything from nothing? What advice would you give them?
It's hard to know without knowing the person, right?
Okay.
Because it really is different for each person. But the one thing I think that is common for almost everyone who's in a depressed state is that they have, in some form or another, they have a victim mindset. And what I would tell them, and this is painful to hear, and I say this because I heard this when I was at that state, and people told it to me and I didn't want to hear it and I pushed it away, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in this state and you don't want to hear this, I get it. I'm sympathetic, but it's the thing you need to actually embrace. That if you wake up tomorrow and assume that everything in your life is your fault and your responsibility, then everything changes immediately. You'll feel at the very beginning, you'll feel first off, you'll feel defensive. No, it's not true. Everything's not my fault. I wasn't born, short or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Right. So you can feel all that, let all that nonsense go. And then just assume everything's your fault and your responsibility. And then just move forward like that. You're going to realize almost immediately that you actually embrace that you can create profound change in your life.
It's so good. I love that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. My dad, when I was little, I'll never forget the one thing he said to me that like I've always stuck with me is he told me when I was little, it's no one else's fault. And that always stuck with me. And it's so powerful. And I totally agree with what you're saying. And we've all been in that victim mindset at times, but there's no change or hope when you're there.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. Tucker, this was so good. Can anyone work with Scribe?
I mean, yeah, of course. Like, so here's our services start at 10 grand. So we're not cheap to work with. Like we're kind of the premium provider in the space, but all of our information, like exactly all of our templates, how we do everything we do, we actually give all of that away for free. Like we could sell that for thousands of dollars for courses, but we don't. So any of your readers who can't afford us, go to scribebookschool.com.
Okay.
And you'll see like videos and everything that we do. You can learn step by step exactly how to write a book. It's the same process we use with our clients. You just have to do it yourself.
Got it. And I think I've not used your service, but I can speak on behalf of like, it's very helpful to work with somebody because then they help pull it out of you and help keep you accountable.
Yep.
Yeah. This is awesome. Thank you so much for doing this today. I think it was super helpful for people too.
Of course. My pleasure.
Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at NatalieJillFit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.